Here.
Oh, thanks for returning my pencil, Ryan. All right. So our final system is the immune system. And the immune system is a little bit strange because, it's not like one specific organ or set of organs that make up the immune system. It kind of is a part of a bunch of different systems that make up our body's protective system that helps defend us from any diseases and so forth. So, first off, to prevent a pathogen is an organism that causes a disease. What are some organisms that could cause disease in our bodies?
Bacteria.
A big one is bacteria.
Virus.
Viruses, and are they alive? Are they really organisms? It's kind of weird, but still, viruses, yes, would be a pathogen. Sometimes other things, parasites, could be animals, parasitic worms and things like that. Could be some types of fungi, can give us disease as well. So in order to prevent that or to keep us healthy as much as possible, the best way is to prevent those things from ever entering the body and ever sort of starting some kind of infection. So we have a lot of ways that our body tries to protect us from allowing these pathogens in. Skin is an important example. Our skin is a sort of protective layer around our body that prevents things from getting in. We also have on our skin millions and millions of beneficial bacteria that live on our skin. And they're helpful actually, because there are harmful bacteria that can infect our skin. But these helpful bacteria sort of keep those harmful ones at bay. Sometimes that doesn't work that well. So my youngest daughter went through last year, she got MRSA, a staph infection, a skin infection. So, and it's MRSA is a methicillin resistant infection. So what you would know, if you normally got a skin infection, you'd probably go to the doctor. They would prescribe you maybe some antibiotic cream, maybe some antibiotic oral medication you would take, and would kill the infection over a period of a week or so. Well, MRSA is a type of bacteria that's resistant to antibiotics. And so when she first got this infection, she went to the doctor, did the normal things, but it didn't help. And she didn't get better. And the infection spread and got worse. And so she had to go through, I think, 3 different antibiotics until they found one that kind of helped it slowly resolve. And so when a person gets that, for some reason, the beneficial bacteria in her skin weren't able to keep that in check for some reason. And now sometimes she got another infection 3 or 4 months ago. So still everything's not perfect. And again, when we can relate this back to evolution, because through the overuse of antibiotics, we've allowed certain types of bacteria to evolve to be resistant to our antibiotics. And so that's why doctors really try not to prescribe antibiotics if they're not actually used. So our skin is a barrier. Mucus in our nose, in our trachea, is also a barrier. It helps trap things that are coming in the air we breathe in. We also have little hairs in our nasal cavity and our trachea that sort of capture little bits of stuff that we breathe in so it doesn't enter our body. Stomach acid is really important because we ingest lots and lots of bacteria. Usually those bacteria, even if they're harmful, would be killed by our stomach acid. Sometimes they're not, and we could get food poisoning or something like that. Tears help protect our eyes. Our intestines are filled with bacteria that are helpful, and they keep harmful bacteria at bay. And we saw the video about C. diff, when those populations of bacteria get out of whack and can cause serious intestinal illness. So those things try to keep pathogens out, but they're not perfect. Sometimes pathogens get into our body. Sometimes there's damage, like if you get a cut, bacteria can get into your body and start an infection. Once a pathogen is in our body, that's when our immune system starts to kick in. Important part of our immune system are white blood cells. So really, they're kind of a part of our circulatory system, but they help defend us against pathogens. White blood cells are interesting. Unlike red blood cells, they have a nucleus in them, sometimes more than one. And there's actually a whole bunch of different shapes. If you ever go on into college and you take health-related courses or immunology, like the immune system is super complex. There's all these different types of cells, and there's all these signals that cells send to one another. It's really complex. We're not going to get into any of that detail, but just know that there's lots of types of blood cells, and they do different jobs. Some of these blood cells destroy pathogens. Some of them mark the pathogen and say, hey, come destroy this. Some of them produce antibodies that protect us in the future. So there's all of these complex ways that our immune system works. So they have names: B cells, T cells, natural killer cells. And these blood cells, some types of them actually produce antibodies. And so there's an important, and some destroy infections at the site. If you have an infection in your body, white blood cells come to that site of infection and start destroying the pathogen. Okay? And that's what pus is. Pus is white blood cells that are congregating in a certain area because that area is infected. Well, how does our immune system know if something is a pathogen? That's an important question. This is an important concept to understand. So all cells of living things, and viruses too, on the outside of them, on the membrane, have little markers called antigens. They basically I compare it to like a flag that's advertising what type of cell it is. So our own body cells all have antigens that say, hey, I'm part of your body. I'm safe. Don't destroy me. And our immune system recognizes our own antigens. And so in most situations, our immune system doesn't attack our own cells. But if some foreign cell comes into our body, it's going to have different antigens on it. And that's what our immune system recognizes. It sees this little flag and says, hey, this isn't supposed to be here. And then our immune system would kick into gear and destroy that cell that's come in. We kind of talked about it when we talked about organ transplants. But if you transplant someone else's organ into a person, the person's immune system might recognize that other organ as an invader because the antigens don't match. And the immune system might actually destroy the organ. It's called organ rejection. So that's how our immune system recognizes cells that shouldn't be there, by these antigens that are on the outside of the cell. And then when it recognizes these antigens, it marks them to be destroyed. So there's a few different ways that these antigens and antibodies work. So antibodies is a different term. Antibodies are what our immune system produces that can attack the antigens, attack the foreign cell. So what we see here, and these are pathogens, these green circles. On the outside, those little round yellow semicircles, those are the antigens. And so once our immune system recognizes these foreign antigens, it starts to produce antibodies. and antibodies protect us. That's what these Y-shaped things are. Antibody is just a special protein that's produced in our immune system that matches with the antigens of foreign cells. Remember, all proteins work based on their shape, and the same is true of antibodies. Antibodies work because their shape matches the shape of the antigen. So what you can see is these antibodies that are purple are kind of binding up all of these pathogens. Okay? And they're calling in other white blood cells to come and destroy these cells. Here you see a pathogen, a bacteria. It has a bunch of antibodies which have attached to it, and that signals this white blood cell to come and destroy it. And so antibodies protect us. And so the term for this type of immunity is active immunity. When we are exposed to a pathogen, our body produces antibodies. Now, it depends on the pathogen. Sometimes these antibodies help us in the short term when we are infected. Other times, they stay in our body and provide us protection for a long period of time. So let's use an example. I'll talk about a couple examples. Chickenpox. Probably none of you ever had chickenpox. When I was a kid, everybody got chickenpox. Okay, and everyone got it once. I got chickenpox when I was in elementary school. Chickenpox is caused by a virus. It causes you to have like itchy bumps on your skin, and it's really contagious. It spreads, like in school, it spread from kid to kid. And so I got chickenpox when I was in, I don't know, third grade or something. Right, I was itchy for a while. I stayed home from school. I think my sister got it too from me. And then I got better in 5 or 6 days. And then I never got chickenpox again. So what happened in my body at that time? Well, I caught chickenpox from some other kid at school probably. The virus was in my body. It caused me to have the symptoms of chickenpox. But while that disease was running through my body, my immune system was producing those antibodies, those little Y-shaped proteins. And that helped me to get better. My immune system killed off the virus eventually. I got better. But our immune system also remembers basically chickenpox virus. And if I ever was exposed again, I'm sure I was exposed again when I was a kid. But now my immune system knew what chickenpox virus looked like. And I had antibodies already still in my body. And so if I was exposed again, my immune system immediately destroyed it and I never got sick again. Because I have those antibodies in my immune system. How come you never got chickenpox then?
Vaccinations.
Right. When my oldest daughter was born, that was right around the time. She was born in 1997. That was right around the time that the first chickenpox vaccine was developed. Before that, there was no vaccine for chickenpox. And so my daughter was like the first generation that got it. Now it's like a required vaccine to go to kindergarten. And so let's talk about vaccines. When you got the chickenpox vaccine when you were 3 years old, what did they actually inject into you?
Dead virus.
Yeah, they injected some chickenpox virus that was killed. It wasn't alive. Because if they just inject you with living chickenpox, what would happen? You would get chickenpox. Right. They treat the virus in some way. They destroy it, or they cut it into pieces, or they only give you a part of the virus. Somehow they're giving you a version that's not going to actually give you chickenpox. And then what did your immune system do?
Like fight it.
It did the same thing mine did, but you didn't have to get sick, right? Because it was an inactive, a dead virus, your immune system recognized this virus, produced antibodies. Your immune system now today remembers what chickenpox virus looks like. If you are exposed to it in your daily life, your immune system is just going to immediately produce antibodies, destroy it before you ever get sick. That's how the vast majority of vaccines work. A vaccine works because you inject into a person a weakened or a dead or just a part of a virus or a bacteria. Your body reacts by creating these antibodies, which stay with you for a long time. Sometimes you have to go back and get a booster, like because sometimes your antibodies sort of fade off over time. And like in 10 years, you might get a booster. Basically, just be revaccinated for it, and that sort of boosts up your immunity again.
Why does it not work like that for like the flu?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't have a vaccine for the common cold. We don't have a vaccine that always works for the flu. As you know, probably COVID vaccines work on certain versions. So some pathogens, like the flu virus, like the virus that causes a common cold, like SARS-CoV-2 virus, they change, they mutate over time. Some don't, like chickenpox hasn't mutated very much. The flu virus, cold virus, COVID, it does change over time. And so as it mutates and changes, sometimes one of those mutations may make it so that your antibodies don't recognize it anymore or don't recognize it as well. The common cold is the one that we have never been able to produce a vaccine for because it is constantly changing and mutating. Same thing. The flu vaccine is a little bit better. So I got a flu vaccine this year. You might or might not get one. They're not required. But what they do is they try to predict which version of the flu is going to be coming around that winter, and that's what they give you in the vaccine. But sometimes they don't predict correctly, and it doesn't work as well. Sometimes they do, and it does work well. And you probably have heard over the past 2 years that with COVID, the virus that causes COVID has changed. Like there was the first version, and it took a little while for us to develop a vaccine for it. And then there was a vaccine. But then that mutated, and there was like the Delta variant. And then there was the Omicron variant. And each time it changed, the old version of the vaccine didn't quite work as well. Still provided protection, but not quite as good. And so that's why in the boosters for COVID vaccines, they've altered it. The newest booster actually protects against 2 different versions. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse game with a lot of these pathogens. That as scientists develop a new vaccine, sometimes the virus changes, then a new version of the vaccine is developed. So it's kind of like a back and forth battle. Why? So polio. We talked a little bit about the other day. Polio is one of the first widespread, it was the first widespread vaccine available. So this is interesting. Polio vaccine was first started to be used in 1955. And so you could see what was happening. These are cases of polio. This is in the US, I'm pretty sure. Okay, you could see at its peak, 58,000 cases of polio in the US. Polio, a crippling disease that could cause a person to have lifelong effects, was deadly for some people as well. Polio was an awful disease to try to survive through, to live through, and it was very, very common. The polio vaccine was developed and started to be used in 1955. And look at what happened to the US cases of polio. They dropped almost immediately as there was an effort to make sure everyone was vaccinated for polio. If you know older people, they might have a polio vaccine. It used to be people might have like a scar on their arm from the
like 6 or something.
Yeah, from the first version of this virus. They had to like scrape your skin to give you the polio vaccine. Nowadays it's different. But you could see basically today nobody gets polio because everyone is vaccinated because we required it as a vaccine for most people. Measles, you've gotten a measles vaccine. It's called the MMR vaccine. And so vaccines work and protect us when a lot of people have them. Because sometimes in your own individual body, maybe a vaccine didn't work. Your immune system might not have responded to it. You don't know that. But if everybody else around you is vaccinated, well, you're going to still be okay. Because even though it didn't prompt an immune response from you, the people around you aren't going to be carrying the virus to give it to you. But you have to have a large percent of the population actually vaccinated to provide that. Sometimes it's called herd immunity. That if most people are vaccinated, then even if a person isn't vaccinated or didn't get the vaccine or it wasn't effective, they're still protected by everyone else around them. And so that's why these vaccines are most effective when everybody gets them. We'll come back to the video at the end. Allergies. Allergies are interesting because allergies are our own immune system. So if you're allergic, let's say to cat, I'm allergic to cat fur. So if I even go into someone's house that has a cat, after like a half hour, I'll start sneezing, my eyes will be watery and itchy. I'm allergic to cat fur. But what happens in my body, I'll use this as an example, if I inhale cat fur or cat dander, my immune system, for some reason, thinks that's like an invading cell. It thinks it's a pathogen, even though inhaling cat fur is harmless to your body, really. But for some reason, my immune system thinks it's actually a pathogen. And my immune system starts to build up a response. And those symptoms that you get from an allergy are immune responses. Watery eyes, swelling, congestion. That's how your body responds when you're sick. And so that's what an allergy is. It's our immune response to what is really just a harmless substance. For some reason, people produce antibodies and have allergic reactions to these things. Just sort of something you're born with or you develop over time. If you have a peanut allergy, for some reason, when a person ingests a peanut, their body thinks the proteins on the peanut are a foreign invader, and they start the immune system going, and they have swelling, and their throat can swell up and so forth, because their body thinks that's a pathogen and they're attacking it. There's medications you could take, an antihistamine, because the chemical that causes those responses is called histamine, and an antihistamine sort of reduces that response. People are allergic to all sorts of different things. Sometimes people can be allergic from skin contact with something, that if you, are allergic to latex, if you get latex on your skin, it starts to become red and swollen and itchy. Foods, common allergies of foods, peanuts, certain medications, dairy products sometimes, bee stings. Some people can be allergic to a bee sting, or pollen, things in the air that we breathe in. People can be allergic to all those different things. If a person has like a bee allergy, bee sting allergy, or peanut allergy, which can be really intense, the reaction, which can be dangerous, do you know what they might carry with them?
EpiPen.
Yeah, an EpiPen. An EpiPen is epinephrine. It's a hormone, and it's a hormone that can knock down an immune response very quickly. And so if a person has a very serious allergy to bee stings, they might carry an EpiPen with them at all times. And if they get stung by a bee, they might have to give themselves the injection of the epinephrine. And that will make the reaction not as severe. And so here we see the allergic reaction. We can see, we get some allergen into our body. Okay, here it is. Our immune system has antibodies against it for some reason. They start a response which releases special chemicals called histamines, which cause the swelling, the runny nose, the itchy eyes, and all that stuff. All right, any question about allergies? All right, that's it for our homeostasis notes. Oh no, I must click that.